Hey, Big Blue Banter listener, would you like an extra $500? That's a lot of cash. Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and, in turn, help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. BlueWirePods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode.
Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato and a reoccurring guest, one of our favorite guests, a great breakdown when he's been on the show. It's former wide receiver Anthony Armstrong. Anthony, let us know where everyone can find your work before we get this thing started.
Man, I like you starting it out with that. Appreciate you having me at Rated Armstrong. I've simplified it. That's it. Find it. If you type it in, you'll find me. So at Rated Armstrong, come holler at me.
Anthony. So the Commanders and the New York Giants, quite familiar with each other. You guys, before I get into Jaden Daniels and the offense, I want to ask, what's the overall feel around the Commanders franchise right now? You guys have a complete change of the guard with Dan Quinn coming in. You have Jaden Daniels now as your starting quarterback. So what's the feel for this team right now?
Man, it's quiet confidence. I mean, obviously the week one performance against Tampa isn't what you were expecting to come out, but ever since that sale happened, everything is like the cloud's been blown away, and it's just like, okay, everything's kind of falling into place. Like the draft was pretty good. You just got to wait and see how those guys pan out, but there's almost like nothing's been going wrong. Okay, now you just need the on-field performance to match up, and you're sitting in a good place where you feel, we were talking off air, like you feel like, okay, there's a future to this, and we're willing to be patient with how it's going. The past 20 years, 25 years where the organization has been find the shiniest Ferrari and put it in there and see if it's going to work. And it's like, bro, you got a Honda engine. Like, it's not going to work like that. So things are different now. It's been changed from the inside out. You almost had a damn near full roster rehaul. I think there's a few more pieces that they need to address, but Adam Peters has done a great job in the first year, and Commanders fans are feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, there's just such a different feel around the Commanders right now because they have Jaden Daniels and because they have new ownership and because they have a new general manager. And I like a lot of the things that he's done so far in the draft. I like the trade back to get extra talent in the middle rounds there. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about – I wanted to start here, talk to you a little bit about the wide receiver position, the position you play, the position you know the most. There are two things I want to start with. One, the new system with Cliff Kingsbury. I'll be honest, Anthony, I've been very critical of Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator. It's not the system that I like. I don't like horizontal raid. And there's one thing that really bothers me, and it's that Terry McLaurin, I looked at the stats last week, lined up almost every snap in one position. Wasn't moved into the slot, wasn't moved around, no pre-snap motion. I was wondering if, one, you think this is going to be designed for the rest of the season or things could mix around. And then I have another question on a different receiver.
Well, I hope it's not what you're going to see all year. I'm banging the table and saying Terry McLaurin needs 10 plus targets a game, and 5 of them have to be those like, oh man, you snuck him into that. Like right. It needs to be 5. Like Justin Jefferson gets 5 easy targets. Just give him the rock. Okay, get your guys started, especially in this matchup with Deonte Banks. I don't want him starting to talk. All right, because the dude he's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot of confidence. And Terry's had good games against this team, but I don't want it to be where it's like, man, we need a big play to get the energy going. Get him his targets early. And I feel you on the horizontal rate. We felt a lot of this last year with Eric Bieniemy. Just a lot of try to catch it and maybe you can turn and get upfield. Man, bust somebody tail deep, please. I need to see a deep threat. I'm looking for a secondary option to show up for Washington this game.
And he's got such a natural throwing arm. Jaden Daniels, he should be the type of offense. Look at what Brian Kelly did with him last year. That was a very vertically oriented offense, and they came really close, McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. I watched that play a couple times on film to hitting it in week one, that big play, and that's going to happen soon. It's just a timing thing. It's a chemistry thing. The second part of the receiver question I wanted to ask you is a player who's getting a lot of buzz, a player who I was very high on, higher than consensus when I watched his tape. I think he's going to be a really big steal for the Commanders, and that's Luke McCaffrey. I'm starting to see him get a little bit of buzz from the coaching staff this week. Maybe this could, they're feeling like maybe this could be the breakout game. What have you seen from Luke McCaffrey, converted quarterback? Does he understand space, how to beat zone? What are some of the things you like about him?
Man, he's like a Swiss Army knife, and when you got that bloodline of McCaffrey, even his mom, I think his mom was an Olympian as
Yeah.
well. So like everybody's an athlete. Oh, hey, no pressure, kid. Here you go. We're gonna put you in new positions in the NFL. I mean, you can see the trust that's been built with him. I mean, you see clips where they're handing him the ball and out of the backfield, and it leads me to believe there's a lot of creativity that could be unleashed, but you can't put everything on somebody's plate all at once. I think he's a guy that you're gonna have to scheme open early, and then if you find something that he's good at, just keep putting him in that position. Just keep working that as he grows in this position. I wouldn't say he needs to be starting outside right now, but he is intriguing and somebody to pay attention to just moving forward, just because of his versatility. You saw they were going to attempt a throwback pass
I know.
in that game, and to play that card so early, you know, I may not would have done it, but they were trying to create some momentum going against Tampa. So you played that card. Now the Giants got to pay attention to it, and everybody else does. But I'm interested to see how Luke's going to develop, especially in this receiving core.
Staying on the receiver room. So Terry McLaurin, absolute stud. You guys spent a first-round pick on Jahan Dotson, who is no longer there. Can you just walk our audience through what exactly happened with Jahan Dotson and why is he now a Philadelphia Eagle?
Man, so I feel like the Jahan's rookie season, absolutely electric. I mean, jumped out 7 touchdowns, then he got hurt, and then kind of lost some momentum from there. But then that last season, with Eric Bieniemy coming in at OC, just it wasn't really working. I mean, y'all understand giving up 85 sacks. Like when you're giving up 65 sacks, you're in third and forever a lot, and you get to be predictable, and it's hard to really get the most out of your players when you're working from such a deficit. And I feel like that Jahan just was caught up in a bad situation. You get to sophomore slump combined with, not getting the ball as effectively as you did the previous years. Different OC, a lot of things get stacked up against you. For him right now, I think Philly got a steal because you're going to have him go into a situation where he doesn't have to be the number one guy. He's going to be one-on-one coverage. You've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith outside. So 3 first-round picks over there. I think he can have some success over there. But honestly, man, you get into I don't want to say bad situation. Just sometimes things just, the dominoes fall and the chips fall where they may. And it's kind of best for you to get a fresh start. So I'm happy for him to be in Philly, but he don't need to ball out whenever Philly plays Washington, though.
Keeping on the offensive side of the ball, Anthony. So we know what's coming. It's a horizontal raid. It's Cliff Kingsbury. The Giants are gonna have to tackle. That's when you're playing this style of offense. The exterior guys, the DBs are gonna have to tackle, and that's gonna be a big focus, I'm sure, for the coaches this week. But one thing I want to ask you about, because it's something that was so concerning in the preseason, and I look at the talent on paper when I go to our lads and look at the depth chart, and it's confusing to me that could be your starting offensive line. But how did the offensive line hold up in week 1? I know there was a lot of projection that Washington would have the worst or second worst or third worst line, could derail things. The Giants did not create pressure in week 1 against the Minnesota offensive line. It's a big point of emphasis for week 2. Is there going to be opportunities for this D-line, or has the O-line outperformed what the expectations were?
Man, I think you have a combination of that quicker play calling and an athletic quarterback who is quick to make a decision to say, I'm not going to hang out back here. I'm going to go ahead and run. That helped the offensive line. I'm still going to go back and look at the end zone copy just to see, but they only gave up 2 sacks against Tampa. And Todd Bowles likes to send some pressure. So 2 sacks, I'm fine with that. I think that's good. Getting the ball out quickly, helping your quarterback. I think that's good. But the way to avoid y'all's defensive line from getting after and then really testing this offensive line is turning around and hand that sucker to Brian Robinson. All right. You're going to have to run the ball to help mix some things up and take that pressure off of Jaden Daniels in this offensive line. Because, Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns going up against rookie Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley. That's one of them ones where if coach makes a play call, he's probably got his fingers and toes crossed. Like, let's be real. He's like, okay, man, so it's a 7-step drop. We need this one to hold up, So those guys are brought in to rush the passer. They're not brought in to stop the run. Right. And I would love to see this offense get physical first and try to, batter down that defensive line, because if they get to pin their ears back, it could get ugly. But have they improved enough? I don't know. It's too early to see, but this is a hell of a test this week.
Were they able to generate any push at the point of attack against Tampa Bay?
I saw some.
Yeah.
I saw a little bit, a few plays here and there. the play calling still went a little bit pass heavy just because of the score, but I did see some Brandon Coleman kind of washing down the whole entire edge. Just,
Mm.
I'm interested to see how he holds up because he does get his feet set in the ground quickly. Like he'll get back and be set. And the sack he gave up was a push pull. So the guy was long armed and pushed him and then pulled himself through. If you're nimble on your feet, I think you can handle that a little bit more. This is coming from a receiver, but I watch a lot of O-line tape. It's more interesting, I guess, than watching routes all day. But nonetheless, it's going to be a hell of a matchup. You're going to see if Brandon Coleman is an NFL level core left tackle in this league. And if he is, Washington got to steal moving forward for years to come.
I want to stay on the interior offensive line before we get to Jaden Daniels, the exciting player that we really want to talk about. But with the interior offensive line, the Commanders just signed Sam Cosmi to a pretty large deal. Used to be an offensive tackle, kicked inside. How was his transition to the inside? I know it's been a couple seasons now. How has that manifested? And also, what's the overall opinion of Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, and Sam Cosmi, because they have a tall task trying to block 97 Dexter Lawrence this Sunday?
Man, Sam Cosmi, Dan Quinn called him a commander through and through. Like he's somebody that you want on your offensive line. When you go back to Brandon Scherf and him coming through Washington, everybody hated the fact that he did not stay. Right, he was your toughest, best offensive line, and then he went down to Jacksonville. To be able to re-sign Sam Cosmi and keep him in the building is big, especially with how you think this organization is going to be going forward. You want that guy to be up there. He wants to be physical. He wants to push people in the mouth and run the ball. So I think he's a big leader across this offensive line. Him and Tyler Biadasz have been the two starters that were out of the gate that Dan Quinn wrote in Sharpie. Like, these are your starters at center and right guard. Everybody else is in flux, right? And you talk about that. Now, Biadasz, I think, is going to be holding it down. His veteran being able to communicate with Jaden, helping with protection, I think he's going to be good. Allegretti, I think he's coming in, I would feel, because your recent Chiefs acquisition in Andrew Wiley, kind of shaky first season. So then you go back to that same store and pick up something else. Everybody's like, let's see if this is still going to be good produce or not. And I think so far it's been good, right? I mean, you got to think having those vets, and I think strategically having those vets are big for Brandon Coleman, okay? So they built it out right. Still something to prove, but so far I think 2 sacks, people are fine, but Andrew Wiley was something that people were paying attention to if Cornelius Lucas was going to be moving in to that right tackle spot or not. But I think so far 1 week in, he's okay.
It's interesting because I said last week when we previewed the Vikings game that if Dexter Lawrence can dominate the interior, the Giants were going to win that football game. And Dexter Lawrence did dominate the interior. The Vikings had Garrett Bradbury, a smaller center. And I know the Commanders had some issues on the interior offensive line. That's where I'm focused. But ultimately, it didn't matter because the Giants threw a pick 6 from their quarterback, and they threw a pick in the red zone, and the offense was completely inept, which negates anything that can be done on the defensive side of the ball. But before we get to that, the Giants offense and where they're at, now they rebound, and that's always a tough subject these days. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels a little bit more. And so when Nick and I went into this offseason, Anthony, we knew the Giants were in the market for a quarterback. Some fans didn't want to buy it for a while, but it was the tea leaves were obvious. So we broke down every quarterback. We watched a lot of Jaden Daniels tape. We also watched a lot of Neighbors tape, which allows you to watch even more Jaden Daniels tape. I think both Nick and I were impressed with what he put on the field. I personally, the thing I like the most about Jaden Daniels is his release. I just think he has such a smooth release, and it gets out quick. There's no wasted movement, and that to me is so valuable in a quarterback. But we also had our concerns. The main one being like just the longevity of his quarterback at his size, but also like there were a lot of situations where, from a pressure to sack rate scenario, and like when he was pressuring that pocket, he would just put his head down and he would run. Okay, so we're looking for him to kind of make plays while he's scrambling with his arm, and it seemed like a lot of time he would run. Has there been any focus or emphasis on that from the coaches? And what did you see in week 1 in this regard when he was pressured? We know Todd Bowles sent a lot of pressures. Was it always kind of the decision was to run, or did he make some plays where he was kind of scrambling?
Man, a lot of them were, just get out of there and avoid the pressure. Okay. He had a great score against the pressure. I want to say he was pressured about 47% of the time, almost 50% by Bowles. But he was able to handle it well. Got the ball out quickly, about 2.23 seconds. So one of the lowest in the league. The good thing about it is that the guy knows where he wants to go with the football. And as many people I've been able to talk to about Jaden Daniels, the guy stays cool and calm. and is able to make good and clear decisions. So that's how you handle the blitz. I mean, if somebody's going to put pressure on you, you have to tax them a couple of times, and then that DC is going to say, "Hey, don't blitz no more. Like we can't blitz anymore because he's gashing us." And so I'm interested to see how this game is going to play out in that regard. I mean, we've seen how, generally young quarterbacks are going to see exotic looks, right? Everything's brand new. The regular season is not anything like the preseason. Preseason is middle school, cover 3, man, like simple stuff.
Right.
Now you got people rolling and dropping, and that can affect your decision making. And when we talked about the sacks, Jaden's athleticism in the pocket, I think, helps the offensive line, right? Where there could be deficiencies or mismatches, I think Jaden has the ability, he's shown it, to get the hell out the pocket and at least go get 10 or 15 yards. We can clean this up later, right? I don't think you can live like that in this league because there's going to be spies and the linebackers run 4-3. And so that can be shut down a little bit, but I would love to see him play from the pocket more. Dan Quinn said it too. He wants him to play from the pocket more. And if he's able to do that, then, that's when we get the shots downfield and you get some more plays that way. But I don't want him running as much. 88 yards, I'm glad he could do it, but please don't make this a weekly occurrence.
And take some of those shots downfield too, man.
Right.
In college, he was just getting abused out there. So Austin Eckler is now a Washington Commander. He played 53% of the snaps. Do you think that was more of a product of the game script, or do you think this is more of a split back type of backfield? I'm trying to judge how exactly are the Commanders going to use the combination of Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler? Because I think Eckler only had 2 carries in the game, but he still played 53% of the snaps.
Man, I think you are going to see a pretty even split, but the tempo and the how the game plays out will determine. Like you said, it when you're down by a good couple scores, you're going to have to put your Austin Eckler in, who can catch it and run and go get some tubs. I would see Brian Robinson being a heavy 20-20 guy. I mean, even goal line to the opposite 20-15, just being able to run the ball. If the running game is rocking, then you're going to see him get maybe upwards of 18-20 carries against New York, and him lead the way with 53% of the offensive snaps, and then bringing in Eckler in third down situations, red zone, stuff like that for mismatches. So I think that if Austin could decide, he said, "Hey, coach, man, I really need to be kind of about 45% of the carries. I don't want to be out there that often," because he thrives off of being in that split set. So give me a little bit less Austin Eckler, a little bit more Brian Robinson is probably what they were going to try to put on the menu, I should say.
I think that's probably the plan for them always. But I will say this, because I watched some tape from Washington's offense this week, and I was surprised because, look, he played injured last year. I think this happens a lot with athletes in the NFL. They put on tape an injured season, and everyone's kind of just like, oh, that's what they are now. And even especially if you're at an advanced age, they're like advanced age, I call it, but for a running back, it is. Sadly, that's what it is. But they'll really bury you, and And I watched tape of him last week. Now that he's had this offseason to recover and just be fully healthy, he had his juice back. Like, there was one play where I was like, damn, that was prime Austin Eckler. He gets so low to the ground, the center of gravity, those cuts, that ability to position his body and then go vertical. I was like, this guy's going to be a problem for the Giants. People aren't expecting it going into this game, but he will be.
Yeah, he creates mismatches out of the backfield,
right?
And once again, it goes back to the creativity on offense, and all these things go together. It's like, you want to be creative on offense, but do we have the time to be creative on offense? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't heat people up all the time, but if you make them pay for it, then you can kind of start to dictate. But it's going to be a good chess match. I mean, it's always been a tough matchup between these two teams, and Sunday's not going to be any easier.
No, they're but it's funny because they're rivals at this point. But a lot of people from Giants fans are like, "Oh, I don't consider Washington rivals." I'm sure Washington says the same thing about the Giants, considering how bad both teams have been. But this is actually the rivalry at this point. Like, neither team can say it's the Eagles or the Cowboys. We don't beat them often. This is the one. Every year it's close. Every year it's a game, and the Giants have had their number, to be honest. But it's not by a lot. It's good games every time.
What's up, everybody? It's Jerry Ferrara. I've got a new podcast called Throwbacks with Heisman Trophy winner Matt Leinart, where we will be talking about all things sports, all things pop culture, and all things about our lives. From football locker rooms to Hollywood green rooms, we've got you covered. We're your weekly destination for the games you want to hear about and the stories you won't forget. Listen to Throwbacks on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with new episodes every Thursday.
What's up, big Blue Banter listeners? I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. And all of Mint Mobile's plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Recently, this is the only matchup the Giants can look at and be like, we have their number. Holy crap, the Giants can have a team's number. That's insane. Daniel Jones balls out against Washington.
5-1-1. Are you kidding me? 5-1-1.
Right.
And I think that comes into play though. He's 5-1-1 against Washington, but now you got Dan Quinn. He's 0-4 against Dan Quinn.
Yes, great point.
1-7 against Dallas. So just taking that brain trust and saying we're going to install this software, you would hope, right? You would hope. But one thing I saw from Washington,
but nah.
I would hope, right? One thing I saw from the game against Tampa for Washington's defense, their DBs were getting a little bit too influenced by their eyes and staying on people who weren't paying attention to like some DBs, good wide receivers getting over the top on corner routes and smashes. So is Dayball, I think he's taking a play calling. He's going to be able to put people in position to take advantage of that and see if he can get people open. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes has been a target for teams. Like, you got to show up, right? You're going to have to show up. BSJ, Benjamin St. Juice, he's going to have to show up as well. So it's not going to be an easy test. These guys can fly. So I really want to see how that DB room is going to show up for Washington too.
I had 5 miscommunications when I went through and charted the defense. 2 or 3 of them, Baker Mayfield didn't even target the miscommunication. And it's just a lot of switch releases. It's something that Brian Daboll has used quite a bit through his time here as the play caller, play designer with the New York Giants. Real quick, before we get to the defense, though, I wanted to ask you about the tight end position because Cliff Kingsbury loves him some Zach Ertz, and Zach Ertz played, I think, like 71% of the snaps. So what's going on with the tight end position? We know Jonathan Bates, love that guy out of Boise State. He's going to be that blocking tight end. But does Ben Sinnott have a role? Ben Sinnott, does he have a role? And are we going to see Zach Ertz kill the Giants again like he used to when he was an Eagle?
Man, I do think Ben Sinnott has a role. He kind of falls in that Luke McCaffrey category where he can do a lot of everything. But John Bates brings you more on-field consistency when it comes to blocking, right? And that's one part of this about this offense that I like the versatility, but I hate the fact that like this one guy only can do this. This is his best thing. So then I have to scheme 7 plays for him.
I hate that.
So then like whenever he comes on the field, they're like, hey, he's running deep. You know, he only runs slants inside.
Yep.
And DBs are good at that. I mean, if we catch it, they're going to catch it. And they're going to say, hey, this guy comes in for 7 plays and 6 of them are slants. All right, I'm going to scoot inside. And you know what I mean? So those things happen. The fact that if you can put John Bates on the field more frequently, then he's going to be out there. So I would like to see him actually get some more attention and make some more plays because if he can make plays with his hands and catching the ball, it just makes the offense that much more dangerous. But you're always going to rely on Zach Ertz. I mean, hey, he's been doing it for years. He's a reliable target, and he's got a good relationship with Jaden.
Yeah.
Is Bates? Sorry, Dan. Is Bates? Do you think Bates has the type of skill set? Has he shown that at all to be an adept receiver in the National Football League?
He's had a couple of plays here and there, but I mean, he's still going to lead with that physicality, and there's always going to be a place for that in this game, especially as you know Ben Sinnott is more of that H-back guy, slightly more receiver-ish, but he's still bigger. He's a bigger body guy, but you don't think him as an inline blocker, right? If we got the way that they're going to have to run the ball Sunday, I need John Bates out there. I don't need Ben Sinnott on the edge. Maybe he can be a wing and then do a double team, but like at the point, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, I need John Bates and Zach Ertz.
And you make an excellent point about just being multiple as an offense when you do. And the Giants have had this in the past. Specifically, I think about the Jason Garrett years where you just bring these guys on, like these wide receivers, and they're in there to block, and then they motion them in. And it's like, all right, now you've tipped off your play completely. You at least have to build off that. Like that's what the McVays of the world do. They'll build off of that and they'll run play action off of that. And they'll mix it in. But I agree with you on that point. I want to flip it over the other side of the ball, though. I obviously had a chance, and so did Nick, to watch Baker Mayfield last week against this Washington team. Now, either Baker Mayfield has evolved into one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and I do want to give him credit because he's really improved his game. I mean, some of the things that Nick and I talked about before you jumped on this podcast are just it's so crazy because we watch one quarterback play, mostly Daniel Jones. And you see Baker, who doesn't, a lot of people before this year were saying Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. Of course, he's a better quarterback. Mayfield is signing with the Rams in the middle of the season. Then he goes to the Tampa for $3.5 million 1-year contract. But like you watch the tape and it's like these quarterbacks don't even look like they're in the same world right now, from how confident they are, how quick the release is from Baker Mayfield, how decisive he is in quick game, the footwork, the squaring your shoulders, just getting your feet and your shoulders aligned to the target, simple things like that at the quarterback position that the Giants have struggled with. And then even just the arm talent, like getting the ball out on the deep half and putting the ball in good spots. These are all things that it looked like he did on tape. Now, how much is the credit to Baker and the system they're running, which is a new system, losing Canals, and how much is the discredit to just a new scheme on, Dan Quinn we love, and we've talked about it a lot, but a new scheme with a lot of, let's say, I don't want to say questionable, Anthony, but talent that hasn't really at least developed yet on the back end.
Yeah. I would say that Washington's defense is kind of similar to New York's receiving core. Young, unproven, you got some potential talent there. I do think a lot of it is, you're going against a veteran receiving core and a veteran quarterback, right? Baker, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, those are vets. Then Liam Cohen coming over from the Rams, like you mentioned how the Rams are able to, scheme people open. So that's just a tough matchup. On my show, I was like, look, you remember when the USA Olympic team would always go against the college all-stars? Yeah. Right. And as exciting as it was to see like these college seniors go up against Jordan, you knew Jordan and all them guys were going to wear them dudes out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how it was. I'm like, okay, you're going up against tough matchup, the scheme, the releases, you mentioned the miscommunications. You get like nobody knows in week one what you're going to get. And now they're going to throw these Uno cards and reverses and draw twos. And you're like, damn, okay, we're confused. Now we can watch tape and we can learn from this. So hopefully Washington has learned and they can come back and try to take advantage of going against what you would think is a lower quarterback. But statistics show Daniel Jones has good games and wins against Washington. So throw those stats out the window. It doesn't even matter anymore. You just got to show up and get better right now. Like who's going to really show up, right? Who's going to show up?
Do we have a feel for the identity of what Dan Quinn wants to do this season with this personnel grouping? Because he's not historically known as this blitz happy type of defensive coordinator. In week one, down heavy, of course, they blitzed 41.2% of their defensive plays, which ranked fourth highest in the league. Do you think that was more of a product of the game script, or do you think we're going to see more pressure and more blitzing from Dan Quinn because the secondary is a little bit, as Dan said, maybe not proven from a developmental standpoint?
I think that you're seeing a defense that knows that it has to be 11 people all on one string to really get the most out of it, right? I mean, your hosses are in the middle, defensive tackles, but they're not going to win one-on-one like Aaron Donald. They're big bull rushing guys. Let me be real. Deron Payne can do that, but a little double team can help slow some of those things down. You don't have that premier pass rusher. No shade to Dorrance Armstrong, great last name, but like there's a mixture of how they're going to get pressure. Jamin Davis, is it going to be Frankie Louvu? Are you having Sandra Still? Is it Quan Martin? So overall, if you're doing all those things on defense, you have to communicate your ass off. You have to say, okay, I'm blitzing from this side. That means I need to cover this because, everybody has to be on a string. And if it's mismatched or if you tell it in a hard count situation like Sandra Still and Baker Mayfield, now you got to be able to bounce back from that because people know what you're doing. So it's going to come as a group that has to grow together. They really have to grow together and get more reps. I don't think you're going to see – it's not like one Micah Parsons out there. It could be 3 or 4 people having 4 to 5 sacks to really outline how this defense is going to play. But if the front can get some pressure and the secondary is in the right position, it could get exciting. And I think that's where you're looking at for Dan Quinn. They want to be fast, they want to be aggressive, and they want to fly around. And I think they're going to have to create some confusion with some versatility in that back end.
I was going to ask you about. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Dan, I'm excited to see how Brian Dable uses his personnel package on offense, because when you look at what they did against Minnesota, they used a lot of 12 personnel. And it was like, oh man, a lot of 12, a lot of 13 personnel. The Buccaneers, they used 11 personnel 85% of the time with a lead. And it seemed like they understood they couldn't run the football all that well. They had the one Bucky Irving 31-yard run, but outside of that, or even with that, they averaged 3.7 yards per carry. It was really just that one run. Washington clamped down on the Buccaneers with a lead, and Baker was just able to carve them up with the quick passing attack. So do you think this is going to really fall on the shoulders of Daniel Jones? Do you think there's going to be much rushing room for Devin Singletary and this Giants rushing attack that really didn't get anything going on Sunday against Minnesota?
There should not be any rushing at all. All right. Nothing at all. I mean, maybe something on the edge, but that interior should be shut down. I would love to see second and long, third and long be the commonplace for New York going into this game for their offense. Right. I think that trying to run, you're going to try to have to run the ball because that's what you do. But if I'm out there paying attention as an offensive coordinator, I know where my weak points are. It's everything else. It's not dealing with Bobby Wagner and all of his friends up front. It's dealing with those secondary players. So if you got Devin Singletary, this may not be the day to have him on your fantasy roster, because I don't think he's going to get a lot of production, but it's that secondary that scares me the most.
Yeah, in my opinion, I just think from watching last week, Nick and Anthony, the Giants' run game is not where it needs to be right now. And this is not just because they lost Saquon Barkley. It's because they have a new system in here, and not a new system on offense, but they have a new offensive line coach in here, and the blocking scheme is completely different. And they weren't really generating much up front. John Michael Schmitz playing through a shoulder injury. The interior offensive line was really built to protect the pass. Van Roten, not built really to protect the pass, but really didn't look good in week one. That interior is just not getting the push. Andrew Thomas, athlete, but not always been a better pass protector than run blocker. And on the right side, Illuminor, better pass protector than run blocker. This is not going to be the unit, in my opinion, that is moving guys on the ground. So I'm with you, Nick and Anthony. I think if I'm Brian Dable, I'd go back and take a page out of my old Buffalo Bills playbook, and something the Giants also did against the Vikings before, and just go pass heavy in this game script, really pass heavy. Now it's going to rely on Jones because he's going to have to look more comfortable to operate that quick game, and he's going to have to put these defensive backs in tough spots. But I don't see how the run game, I don't see how trying to, and then last week they did, man. Like they tried those quarterback design runs with Daniel Jones that went nowhere, Nick, and went 2 times in a row. It killed a drive. So I just don't think that's the play for this week.
No, neither do I. And I want to extrapolate on those ideas a little bit more. The Giants ran a lot of 2x2 sets. I think they ran it most at 47%. They only ran 3x1 sets at a 33%. And the Buccaneers ran 3x1 sets. They're high with their 11 personnel package at a 45% clip. And those were where a lot of the miscommunications came against Washington. And a lot of those came from condensed sets, everybody inside the number. And when they weren't inside the numbers, the player who initially before the snap was outside the numbers would motion in, and then they would snap the football. He would become the 2, and that would create a miscommunication. So Anthony, I want to ask you, with this match type of defense, when you guys are in middle of the field closed, cover 3, or even quarters, it seemed like you guys were in middle of the field closed a lot and then would rotate and gain a lot of depth. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But do you think the communication overall for this young secondary, did you see on film that was just easily picked apart by Baker Mayfield? We alluded a little bit to it before with the miscommunications, because that was very evident. And was that a problem throughout training camp for Dan Quinn and these young DBs?
I'll start with the training camp portion of it. I don't think it was so much of a problem in training camp because, like I said, you see in bare bones vanilla. They ain't but 3 flavors in training camp and preseason. Nobody runs anything exotic. So now when you're, unless you don't know what they showed in those joint practices, what was happening there. But this was the first time you get to see this, anybody's offensive, Tampa's offense and Washington's defense. So they really weren't, it's not an excuse to say they weren't prepared. They didn't know what they were going to see, but frankly, you didn't know what you're going to expect. And so if you go in, you're thinking, okay, well, maybe they're going to run outside leverage because the last time they run outside and now they run inside. So you kind of gotta take your licks, and this is a big learning experience. I hope all week they sat there and watched tape and said, okay, hey, if this happens, number one, this is how you're going to coach it up. So ultimately, you didn't see it in preseason, but the 3x1 set can create a lot of confusion, like you already mentioned. because sending people in every which way, and if they're manning a lot, sometimes I saw it was a lot of man in these condensed sets. And frankly, if I'm playing Madden, I'm not the best Madden player, but if it's condensed set and you're playing man, you're going to get yourself in some trouble because people are crossing, you're going to run into people, and now you're just giving up instant leverage. Unless you got somebody that's going to get up there and just disrupt everything, you can't really do it from off. So you have to play, in my opinion, play a zone, but know where everybody's going and where you're going to pick people up from. So ultimately, I do expect Brian Daboll to look at the tape and say, this is that exact play. Put it in our offense this week and see if Washington can fix it. If not, then he's maybe giving us a gift over here in Washington. But I would expect to see a lot of those same exact looks just to try to find ways to create openness and separation for these players.
It's interesting too, because like you mentioned, Liam Cohen comes over from the Rams, and I'm a huge fan of Liam Cohen. I know Nick and I watched him with Will Levis, and he was just so much better than Will Levis was playing at a level he's never played at before and hasn't repeated. But part of why I find that interesting is because he comes over from the Rams, and it's like that's their whole DNA. Like that's what McVay does, those tight condensed splits, get the guys motioning into those. It's not necessarily been Daboll's DNA. He's done it at times in the Vikings playoff game. Like there were some really good switch releases, really good examples of this, but it's not exactly what the offense has always been. So I'll be curious if you're right there, Anthony, if Daboll's going to take a page and look at the tape against Tampa and be like, we have this, we just have to use this.
I mean, if you know that this is your quarterback, or else you got to wait until April to pick a new one, you better get the most out of it. Because if you got to pick a new one in April, you probably got to get a new house, right? Both of y'all are gone. There's going to be a new head coach and a new quarterback in Big Blue, if we being real. So why not, right? Like you're at the point where it's like, hey, man, I'm taking over play calling. I'm going to be responsible for this ship going up or down. Let's open this thing up and try to see what the previous teams have done.
It seems crazy for Dan and I to come here after watching week one and say, yeah, we need to put all this on Daniel Jones' shoulders, and Daniel Jones needs to win us this game after the way Daniel Jones played. But that's what I took away from watching Washington against Tampa Bay, because there were so many holes. There's so much to be exploited from all the things that we've discussed on this podcast. I want to ask you one more defensive question, and it's about Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner, look, I have the utmost respect for Bobby Wagner. He's been one of the more underrated players as my time as an adult. I think he is my age, to be honest. So I look at him, I'm like, yo, you're still out there rocking it. Go get it, Bobby Wagner. So how did he look, Anthony? And he sees that just true leader. It seems to be in his DNA, that true leader of this defense.
Man, he looked good. It was weird seeing that 54 out there in the Burgundy. It was weird to see Eckler. It was weird to see all of these like names of players that you would never consider going to Washington. And they're like, wow, they're actually here. Like, wow, this is real life. So I think that he's going to bring that calming presence. I mean, it's a very young defense, right? And I've called for it. They needed a leader that's going to shut the door and say, hey, folks, this is not how we play football in the NFL. We need to get right. And after week one, he's got to be that vocal leader. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, saying, hey, everybody, let's look at this tape. Let's do this all together and get on the same page, because something special could happen. He's going to bring that level of maturity to an extremely young linebacking core. Frankie Louvu, he's going to bring that energy. Jamin Davis he's playing defensive end. But having Bobby Wagner being able to move people around, there's already been some great players on Washington, but there hasn't been that vocal leader that they've needed since London Fletcher has been running around. So now that he's there, it brings a breath of fresh air. At least you feel like you're going to be pointed in the right direction on defense.
I will say this on that front. While I agree with you from that standpoint, it's very important. I think it's going to help with communication. It's going to help with the run game. At times last year when we got a chance to break down his tape, specifically when they played the Giants, he did look a little bit slow from an in-space standpoint in the passing game. He's obviously an older player. I saw a breakdown of one play on all 22 from last week where I forget who it was. It was either Rashad White or Bucky Irving, but they got one of them going on a screen game, and it was a really rough rep for Wagner. This is an area where I actually think the Giants need to focus as well. We talked a lot about like doing a lot of what the Bucs did last week with those condensed splits, and I think they really need to figure out how to get the screen game going, and really need to figure out how to get, in my opinion, Tracy or even Singletary or whoever is out there matched up against Wagner, to be honest, one-on-one in man, because these are just opportunities that if I'm the coach, I'm looking for. But we'll see, because, the Washington knows this is coming as well, and they'll probably scheme around that. But what are your thoughts on what you've seen from Wagner in space?
Well, I did see that screen And I was like, ooh, that didn't look right. That didn't look good. It's like, hey, man, I feel it. I'm speaking from 41. Like I run a mile or two and I'm like, I'm down for 2 or 3 days. I'm like, hey, I'm on the short-term IR. So I get it with Bobby. Ultimately, it's one of those ones where you hope, I won't say you hope he's not in those positions to get one-on-one, but they're going to happen from time to time. And
Right.
yeah, you're going to take your chance, but the dude did lead the league in tackles last year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the week one against a shifty young running back and against a 30-something-year-old, I'm going to take the young guy. But across the middle, Rashad White and crew, they probably wouldn't want to have to deal with Bobby Wagner where everything's all square. So in space, sure, he may be a little bit of a liability, but I'm going to take that years of experience and that leadership over all of that. And in this situation, you do until somebody else shows that they can be a better pass defender than he is.
And Giants fans, one matchup that I'm not looking forward to is Daron Payne against John Michael Schmitz. So I wanted to ask you, Anthony, did we see a lot of Daron Payne at one or nose technique in Dan Quinn's defense, or was he kicked out more towards like the 3 or the 4 eye shade?
Man, I tell you, I got to go look at the close, the end zone to get better numbers on that. But I will say, I've mentioned it before, the versatility across the defensive line is something to pay attention to. Y'all noticed week one, Chiefs Ravens, Chris Jones had said, oh, here's a rookie right here at left tackle. I'm going to line up at left defensive end. Like, that's the type of versatility that I think you're going to see, or versatility, I should say, that you're going to see from this defense. You may see Daron Payne out on a tackle at some instance if that matchup looks good, right? You have 3 defensive tackles in the middle and one end and the linebacker on the opposite side. So where he lines up and where everybody lines up at, I think it's going to be a crapshoot until you find that right matchup. So if they're able to create a one-on-one where he can get an edge on a guard or on a center, then let him line up at that 1 or a nose. But also know that John Allen right on somebody's head is not it's not going to be easy either. Right? You're going to have to tap, hey, can I get a guard to help me out, right? One or the other. And then that's going to do nothing but free things up. And when you add in the DBs that are blitzing, so that communication across the offensive line can help free up Daron Payne, help free up somebody else. But I expect Daron Payne to have a big day.
And that's such an astute point by you, because it's the defense, right? It's like Dan Quinn comes over. Look at what he did with a prospect like Micah Parsons. He turned him into an edge. Like, this guy was an off-ball linebacker at Penn State. I know
he's trying to do it with Jamin Davis right now.
Man.
Right. And now he's trying to do it again with Jamin Davis, somebody whose career, remember, the Giants almost drafted Jamin Davis. It was him or Tony. Unbelievable. It's like I know Jamin Davis, I'm not trying to knock it. It's been a tough start to his career, and I hope Dan Quinn can find a way to use him and revive it. But somehow he's one of the only, Tony's one of the only guys that would have been a better pick than Tony, slightly better pick than Tony. Or I said that wrong, but Tony's only slightly worse of a pick. Yeah. So, but it's interesting to see if he can convert Jamin Davis to that. Anything else we need to know about Dan Quinn's defense before we get to the predictions part of the show?
Oh man, those safeties are something that are going to be getting active. Jeremy Chin spends a lot of time up at the line of scrimmage and in the box as well. So you talked about matchups with tight ends. It should be more safeties that are going to match up with tight ends, bigger ones. I would like to see, rather than saying we're still that's like 5'9", 5'10", going up against a big 6'3", 6'4" tight end. So interested to see how those matchups happen. Are they able to handle Malik Neighbors just overall as a unit? Because they need to bounce back, and to have success, you're going to have to get your hands on the football. So that's what they've been preaching. Get your hands on the football, and I think this is the week to get it started.
Before we get into the predictions, Anthony, you played wide receiver in the National Football League. Can you just give our audience your opinions of Malik Neighbors?
Malik Neighbors, he's an uber talented guy. Like, he's got all the skill sets, and he's coming from the right school. So if you want to compare him to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, you're not wrong in doing so, because he's put up those type of numbers. And he's got some speed, he's got routes, he's got hands. I mean, the game against the Texans, like, they were just throwing the ball to him any which way, and he was making those plays and those type of catches. So he's going to bring you some excitement. He's going to bring you some big plays, but he's kind of like in that Terry category. Is best used if you use it often. All right, get him the rock early, make it easy. That way he's happy, and then the big plays will come from there. But don't start until week 3. All right, we don't need anything right now. But I think Malik Neighbors is a talented player. He was one of those ones where if something wonky would have happened and Washington ended up with him, I wouldn't have been mad. We'd have just say we'll figure out the quarterback position later. But I'm glad we got Jaden.
All right, let's get into some predictions here. Nick and I were god awful on our predictions last week for what happened to the Giants in week 1. So we're going to try to be better this week. Anthony, we're going to let you start this off. Give me your score prediction for this game.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say this. You talk about having an awful week 1. I was in a Survivor League. I picked Cincinnati.
I did
So
too.
I am no longer in the Survivor League. I signed up late and then I was out just as fast. So I was like, I should have just forgot to pay. But that's neither here nor there. For me, where this is Washington's a 1-point favorite, I do think that it needs to be a dominating performance from Washington. I think that they need to win by 2 or 3 touchdowns, frankly, to really show that they're going to be, to hold it down against this team, because the history shows if it's close and it's tight, there's a good chance it could be a tie or the Giants are going to get a W. So whatever it is, I need it to be by 2 touchdowns or more for Washington. So you pick the number 34 to 20, anything above from there. But I need Washington to score some points.
If that happens, New York might just fall apart.
Yeah.
like
blown out by Washington.
Just goodbye. That would be absolutely terrible for the New York Giants. Now, I feel like right now, Ronald McDonald, Krusty, I feel like John Wayne Gacy. I feel like a freaking clown because for whatever reason, I'm about to select the New York Football Giants. I think the matchup against the Minnesota Vikings was a very bad matchup for Daniel Jones, for this offense. I'm not making excuses for them. I don't think the Giants are all that talented, but I think the youth of Washington will be exploited by Brian Daboll. I feel, again, like a clown that, I feel like Pennywise that I'm selecting the Giants here, but I am going to go with the Giants. I think it's going to be relatively low scoring, but I'm going to go 20-17 New York Giants. They will keep it close, and the Giants will find a way to win the football game. And I'm going to go and start putting my makeup on now. I'll see you guys.
Yeah. Look, if you had asked me this question, I don't know, let's see, 6 days ago, I would have predicted the Giants would actually win by multiple scores. That's where I was at going into the season. No offense to Washington. They're a younger team. I don't love their talent on the defensive side of the ball. And I think ultimately on the offensive side of the ball, it's a rookie and he's going to have some growing pains. But that was when I thought the Giants would have confidence on the offensive side of the ball. And from what I saw last week with Daniel Jones, it was the most uncomfortable he's ever looked, including the Monday Night Football game against Tampa. The footwork was just unbelievably off. It was not connected at all to the upper half. He was not getting his feet toward the target. The shoulders weren't getting toward the target. It looked like somebody who was just cooked and rattled. And somebody mentioned the David Carr syndrome. It looked like that. Now, that's 1 week. He could totally look like a different player this week. And I think there's a chance of that. But is it enough of a chance? Like, I think it's even a higher chance than 50%, 60, maybe 65. But if there's even just a 35% chance that Daniel Jones could be what he was last week and just unconfident, and Dan Quinn, like you said, has had success against him. If it's that version, they can't win a football game against any team. It doesn't matter. You might even play Georgia and lose if your quarterback is that rattled and the feet and we're grounding balls. I mean, he missed a 6-yard flat on the first throw of the game. He missed a 6-yard throw to the flat. I'm talking about traveled 6 yards in the air, and it was low and at the feet of the running back. The reason he did it is because he didn't get his feet around and he didn't get his shoulders around. And he kind of just winged it like this. There were multiple balls over the middle of the field that bounced to the receiver. This is like scary type stuff. And again, I think there's a 65% chance he won't be that guy again, Anthony. No. But if there's a 35% chance, it's hard for me to predict the Giants will win. I think they'll be able to stop this defense better than they stopped Minnesota. So I'm thinking maybe it's going to be like 20-13 Washington.
What are the chances? What are better chances? Drew Lock. Drew Lock is in the game, or Washington blows him out.
If you had to pick between those two things. Well, I think they're kind of mutually
probably go together, don't they?
Yeah,
I guess it depends on how them points came from White. If there's another pick six, what did I see the stat? There's been more pick sixes than touchdown passes to Giants players since he signed the contract. Now, where I can say that year he played well enough to deserve the contract, I think deep down I was like, they really don't need to re-sign him. Like, they really kind of need to not do it. But you're in a league where it's like, one side of it is like, well, what else are you going to get?
Right.
Or do you just deal with what you got? And I think right now they chose to deal with what you got. But We'll see what happens in April.
I mean, Nick said it best before this podcast. Nick, you said, and I'll let you speak to this if you want to, but said it would have taken a lot of, I don't even know the word to use, a family-friendly show, but I'll just use it, balls, to move on from him after that point. But ultimately, it would have been or at least to let him just test the market after that, right? Because are we sure that anybody was interested in signing that profile of a player with two neck injuries and whatever the hell was going on, and also just really inconsistent play? But it's so rare that we see GMs make that kind of ballsy move where, like, you just look at this playoffs, you won a game, we still don't believe in you long term, we'll let you hit the market. And, you know, because you said it, like, what was their option other than that? But the crazy thing is, like, Tyrod Taylor outplayed him on film last year. Nick and I broke down the tape. A lot of Giants fans, some of the homers disagree with that, and they say, oh, he had all this stuff around him. He didn't have that great of a situation around him, Tyrod Taylor. He had a better situation than Jones, but it wasn't that great. And he straight up outplayed him. I mean, if you look at the numbers from a clean pocket, Tyrod Taylor was the 8th best EPA of any quarterback from a clean pocket last year. That takes out all the pressures, all the bad situations. Daniel Jones was 42nd, and Tommy DeVito was 43rd. So that's what you were dealing with last year. So it kind of was like, if you don't have that option, you could have just kept Taylor was under contract for $8 million or $9 million. Use that cap space to build the line. Use that cap space to build other stuff. And who knows what would have happened after that.
Look, you go on a whole other rant with that, because I've said that so many times. I feel like a lot of times these organizations, they want to get the quote unquote franchise quarterback. I'm like, bro, you've been chasing this franchise quarterback for 20 years. Build a team for once. Right? Build a team. And I mean, we talk about Washington with the draft and free agency. Adam Peters has done a hell of a job flipping this roster. There's a couple of players left that are from previous regime. One of them you re-signed in Sam Cosmi. One of them's your punter. You know, like, there's a couple of pieces that are left, a couple of DBs, and some of them, frankly, may not be here after next season. He's done a good job flipping this roster. For what it's worth, New York they picked up pieces. Is it all coming gelled together yet? No, not at all. There's a lot of turmoil going on over there. But if they get it right, it could be trouble. But it ain't gonna be right now.
It was a pusillanimous move. That's the way I described it from Joe Shane, but I understand it given the context at the time, but it would have took so much balls for him to move on from Daniel Jones. But they set up that move, though, previously by signing Tyrod Taylor to the 2-year deal, because they expected them to suck, and they didn't pick up Daniel Jones's 5th-year option. So that move, that blueprint was there, but they saw the success from the 2022 season and said, we can build upon that. They saw the development of Jones and said, we can seize upon that. And they couldn't. And that failed, and they're still living in that hell right now.
And that word pusillanimous that Nick just used, he was spending 50 minutes trying to figure out where he could insert that into the show, and he found it.
I'm gonna look
50 minutes to talk about like a year.
I'm gonna look that one up. He sounded like Don King.
It was like Don King.
On
that note, we'll end it right there. Thank you to everybody for listening to the podcast. One more time, though, Anthony, let everybody know where they can find your work.
Yes, y'all can hit me up on all social media at Rated Armstrong, and check out the show at BLEAV Commanders. I got a Philly fan that listens to that show. So y'all big blue folks, come over there and listen to me, man. We talk good ball. I don't just bash people all day. We try to break some stuff down. But yeah, at BLEAV Commanders for the show at Rated Armstrong. That's me.
Hell yeah. Thank you to everybody tuning in. Please like and subscribe and rate our show as well. And have a great rest of your weekend. Go Giants.